Where were you born and in what year?
I was born in Anniscall in the Dingle Peninsula in the year 1928.
What area in the parish did you grow up in?
In the railway station. My father was station master on the railway, so it was there I grew up.
Do you know where your area got its name from?
Anniscall, the river of the shadows. Or it could be the river where the heroes were, Anniscall.
Now, you arrived into Cashel as a teacher. What was Cashel like when you arrived?
I arrived in August 1949, and 49 into the 50s was a time of depression. Now, this will be my third depression that I remember. 40 into the 50s, we had it again in the 80s, and now we have the economic depression again. But Cashel was very, very poor altogether when I came here. And were it not for immigration, people would have been in an awful way.
How did you find out about things that were happening in other places in Ireland and in the rest of the world? Was it all newspapers or radio?
All newspapers and the start of the radio. And when I was about 12 or 13, radios were becoming popular. And the radio to have a radio, you had to have a dry battery and a wet battery. And coming on to the matches and so on, we'd be trying to save the batteries. We wouldn't be allowed to listen to anything. And it just shows you, in our own home, not everybody had the wireless, it cost money, you see. But in our home, we had the wireless, and I remember for some big hurling match or something like that, the window, a big window in the kitchen being taken out altogether, and the whole lot of the kitchen was seated, and a lot of the people from that part of the village had come up to the railway station, and they were all seated down inside. It was like a theatre, and there was a gang outside looking in the window, listening to the match. So that will tell you how it was the start of radio becoming popular. Now, an amazing thing, Mr. John F. Rogers, who taught over in the school before my time, he was dead when I came here, he sang in 2RN, which was the precursor of Radio Éireann. And in the minute book of the INTO here, he's congratulated on his wonderful rendition of Irish airs that they had listened to on 2RN. This would be before Radio Éireann. Now it's just, what is it now, TV2 and TV1 and all this.
When did you get television in Cashel?
No, as regards exactly the years, I couldn't tell you, but the first televisions in Cashel again were by the people who could afford them. And this had been the 60s. And we hadn't a television for a good few years after getting married. We couldn't afford it. At that time, we were blessed to be able to afford an electric cooker and a washing machine. Now, they were the two great things to, as a young married couple. But our neighbour in Miss Corby's there in up Boherclaw, it's for sale now, and she had plenty of money, and she had a big mast. I suppose it was 70 or 80 feet erected on her roof, and she was able to pick up the television signals, and she invited all the neighbours for the opening of RTE television. I wasn't at it, but I remember my wife being invited, and she gave them a high tea that night. When I started teaching first, there was no such thing as getting an apartment or a flat. You went into lodgings, and I gave 3/4 of my pay to the landlady, who provided me with full meals and bedding and all that. Now, the next thing then was, as things were getting better, Cashel was improving. The urban council were building more houses through government help, government agencies, and they developed all Dominic Street up around there, all the way up towards the Rock, and tourism started getting that great lift. Buses started coming. Now the railway, unfortunately, we got the branch line here in 1904 through the efforts of the Dean, and politicians didn't do much for it. But he was instrumental in getting the railway, and it only lasted 15 years. The railway took you nowhere. It was only a little siding, as you may say. And I regret to this day that it closed down, because it would have been such a great draw, even 4 or 5 times a year, to bring in excursions from other areas, although cars now are providing the transport. But when I came here, I'd say if he had 100 tours a week up in the Rock. Joe Minogue was the caretaker. And always after school in the evening, if the weather was very fine, and I lived down at the end of the town, I always went for a walk up to the Rock. And I spent all my nice summer evenings or autumn evenings up on the Rock itself. And I must have taken 1,000 people around, gave them guided tours of the Rock myself. And on a good few occasions I was handed a Hansel by a Yank, thanking me for I didn't want it at all. I prefer if they'd, but poor Joe wasn't maybe around when they'd ask, was there anyone take them around and show them? But, and now, at that time, the Rock, there were sods of grass growing on the top of Cormac's Chapel. There were sods. I saw the sods growing there. A friend of my own, who was a teacher, Pat Hartnett, and Pat, the poor fella, he had a nervous breakdown, and Pat had to give up the teaching. He wasn't able to manage the class. But again, he was unfortunate, I think, that it was in a very depressed part of Dublin that he was teaching in. And he was, as you may say, he jumped from the frying pan into the fire. Couldn't, so he gave up the teaching altogether, and he did archaeology. And in his archaeology, he went down through all France and In France, they were starting to light up the great chateaus, and they were doing a program called Sonnet Lumiere. And he continued down through France, Italy, across, and into Greece. And they were just after floodlighting the Acropolis in Greece. You know this from all the pictures of it with the big pillars. And he said, God, wouldn't it be great if the Rock of Cashel was floodlit? And now, this fellow had great political connections through Fianna Fáil. And he landed a job with Bord Fáilte as their first archaeological expert. And was up and down. He's from Kilbrin outside Kanturk in North Cork. And you know, this where he's from, there's a Cashel connection. Because when Taff and his army left here in 1647 and left the town open to Mother O'Brien, and 2 years after to Cromwell's army, he retired to down there, and it was he gave battle in Cnúc-na-Nus, Cnúc-na-Nus, the little hill of the bones of the. But he was up and down then, and he said to one of his brothers, who was a De La Salle teacher, "Do you ever go pass through Cashel? Why don't you call to see my great friend John Knightley there?" I didn't know this Pat Hartnett at all. And the next thing is Pat started calling to me. I lived below on Bortlaw at the time. And he said, "I have been to the Urban Council and they have no money to light the rock. I could give them the capital for the installation, but not for the running of it. The Office of Public Works, OPW, who runs the rock, they have no money to do it. The Urban Council couldn't do it. I've been to the County Council, they couldn't do it." He said, "This is the second year that I have this in my budget," he said. I think it was £27,000 or something for putting in all the cables and so on around the rock. And he said, if you would try to form some committee, maybe you'd be able to get it going. And we started a committee and got the rock floodlit. And again, it drew attention to the rock, and it helped. It helped, I must say, even though that we were criticised for doing it. And subsequent to that, a friend of mine, another teacher, stuck in the Rosa Tralee festival down there, and he was passing through town, and he called to see me, and he said, "Hey," he said, he had seen the Rock of Cashel floodlit sometime when he was passing through at night time. And he said, "Try Guinness's, they'll give you sponsorship." And it took me, I'd say, a fortnight to compose the special letter to Guinness's looking for sponsorship. And we got it for 15 or 20 years. And they paid for all the consumption of the light. And the next thing then was the fixtures, the same as camera work, the change had come in lighting, and you were no longer these big bulbs. The bulbs that were used above the rock that were as big as a bucket. Big, huge bulbs. And there was all this new type of filament lighting and everything. And it had to be renewed. So as a committee we said, things have improved, and the Board of Works took over the floodlighting of the rock. So they're floodlighting it since.
Do you have any final words for the people who will be watching this recording?
One other thing that I remember, because I met a man down the street there only one day last week, and he said, "How are you?" he said. God, he said, the way we look forward to our day in Clonee. We're only 47 miles from the sea here. And when I came here, there was, I suppose, 50% of the population had never seen the sea. Because don't forget now, we had no channels down to the sea here. It was to Dublin, though, train it take you 50 to 54, or North 4 to 54. So a lady here gave the Vincent de Paul in 1950. She gave us £50, and she said, "I'd like if he took the children, some of the poor children, to the sea for a day." And imagine, we kept doing that for 21 years. And some of the women and men around the town, they'd say, "God, I remember that. It was the day we look forward to, a day at the sea." And imagine, in our 21 years, we had only one wet day. And we provided them with tea, sandwiches, everything. And as you may say, the £50 stretched out and out and out, but it was the Vincent de Paul, and we had a special collection every year for it. But some of the, and recently there, I was sympathizing with 3 women, 3 sisters, and I said, some of these know, like, I mean, I'd be familiar with them, and I said, "How are the 3 sisters?" God, I said, I missed your other sister's funeral. Ah, sure, that was to be expected, Mr. Knightley. But you were great on the radio there last week. I wasn't on any radio last week. You were all about the children's outing. I said, I wasn't. That's years ago. I said that I was on the radio doing that. She said, that was years ago. A program that I did and that had been recorded. And David had found it, and she said, she'll produce this again.